Hello and welcome to Confident at Work. I'm Anna Manning and I'm your confidence coach today. We're going to talk about the 7 skills that I think every professional needs. And the reason I say that I think every professional needs these skills is because I've been coaching people on professional confidence since 2018. And I've observed the same patterns many times, i.e., over and over again, with almost everyone that I've worked with. And I'm going to take you through today how I came to know that these 7 skills existed and be able to name them. And I'm going to take you through them one by one so that you've got a little bit of info about each one. So let me just check a setting first of all and see if. All right. Okay. So the 7 skills, what are they and how did I find out about them? So I work with professionals who are good at what they do, but they don't always feel as confident as they want to. And most of the time, when people come to me, they don't really know why. They don't really know what's going on. They don't really know what's getting in their way. They usually think, well, I'm just not really one of those kind of people. I've never been that confident, or maybe I've always struggled. And I take them through and I help them to think about what is their context? What is going on for them that might be getting in the way of their professional confidence? Because if you know what you're doing at work and you can do your job and you're not getting complaints, you'd think that you'd feel fairly confident about what you're doing. But a lot of professionals don't. And that's where I come in. So last week on the live stream, we talked about the things that can get in the way of your confidence. And I introduced you to the low confidence cycle and the high confidence cycle. And we're going to go a little bit further than that today. So the thing that I want to know when I'm working with a client or when I'm thinking about working with a client is, are they currently in a low confidence cycle? And most people who are coming to speak to me are. And there are components of that low confidence cycle, which I identified from going through hundreds of hours of coaching data and seeing the same things that were coming up again and again. Now, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of things in our external world like toxic cultures and difficult bosses and unconscious bias or racism, which can impact on people's confidence. All of those things happen and they are real, and there are internal things that we might be doing which can be having an impact on our confidence and will be having an impact on our confidence. And whilst we can't control all of the outside world, despite the fact that we would like to, there's all these internal factors that we can actually control if we can spot them. And that is the basis of that low confidence cycle. And it's whether you're managing yourself well, whether you are being reasonable or realistic in terms of the standards that you're setting, and whether you're giving yourself fair feedback and acknowledgement for the things that you do. So I will leave a link so that you can go and look at those high and low confidence cycles. But as I work with clients, I'm thinking about, okay, how do we go from a low confidence cycle to a high confidence cycle? And I've taught this work on the low confidence and high confidence cycles for years now. But one thing that I hadn't applied my mind to as well as I could have done was, what is the bridge between the low confidence cycle and the high confidence cycle? So we know what both of them look like, but how do you actually get from one to the other? And when I'm working with a client individually, obviously we do that individually. So we look at the different elements for them, we look at what the bridge would be like, and then I help them to walk across it in the work that we do together. But I started to think, what if I could do that on at scale? What if I could teach people the things that they would need to know, help them make the changes they would need to make to get from a low confidence cycle to a high confidence cycle at work? And as I really thought about that, I really started to identify the 7 skills which take you from a low confidence cycle to a high confidence cycle. And I love thinking about it in terms of skill development, because very often for the people who work with me, they think, "Oh, well, I'm just not one of those people. I'm just not very confident. That's just not really me." And that's just a done deal. There's nothing I can do about it. It just is that way. And it That is not the case at all, ever, because they're definitely, even for the people who feel really low on confidence at work, there'll be loads of things that they do feel really confident doing. So we know that it's not a personality thing. We know that it is not just you've either got it or you don't, and good luck to if you don't. We know, and I know from my work with people, that you can develop your professional confidence. So these skills, and I love thinking about it as skills, are things that you can develop. And as you develop them, you will develop your professional confidence, because these are key components of your professional confidence. And they're almost like the foundations. So, say you were going to build a skyscraper and that was going to be your career, or a house, however you want to build your career. You need these things as your foundations, because if you don't have them, sooner or later, you're going to try and build higher and higher. And then there's going to be wind, and there's going to be weather, and there's going to be all different things that affect that structure. And if you haven't got these foundations, you see what happens to buildings when the foundations aren't done properly. They collapse sideways, or they just, you know, they crumble under the pressure. And that's often what happens with the professionals that I'm working with as well. They don't have these skills developed, so they don't have a solid foundation for their career to be built on, for their confidence to be built on. So I am now completely intent on, this is like the next phase of the work that I'm going to be doing with people, is to get these 7 skills out there into the world, have them understood, teach them, and help people to develop them, because that's actually what I've been doing for years. But now I've really taken the time to think about it. I want to introduce them to you, and I want you to think about, for you, whether or not you've developed these skills already. Because in my last How to Grow a Professional Confidence class, I took people through the skills and I helped them to identify whether they were beginner or intermediate or advanced. And there were some skills where people were already intermediate or advanced, even without thinking about it. And that's probably going to be the same for you too. So let me just get these skills up in front of me. Unfortunately, I can't share any visuals with you, but I want to have them in front of me. Okay, great. So I'm going to take you through the 7 skills, and then I'm going to break them down in a little bit more detail. So the first skill that you need, that every professional needs to develop their career and to feel confident at work, the first one is to respect yourself. The second is to trust yourself. The third is to take care of yourself, specifically to take care of emotions. The fourth is to set realistic standards. The fifth is to be able to recover from failure, mistakes, and setbacks. The sixth is to be able to evaluate fairly. And the seventh is to be able to celebrate and acknowledge yourself for the things that you do. Now, if you are familiar with my work, you may recognize some of those already. But let's start right at number 1, probably because it is the number 1 skill that I think every professional needs to develop. And I don't know why, but I just don't think that people teach us how to do this stuff. So we don't necessarily develop the skill of self-respect, of respecting ourselves. So what it looks like if this skill isn't well developed at work is that you will finish doing something, and then you will kind of start mentally picking it apart and attacking yourself for the thing that you didn't do well. Maybe you think, "Oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? Ugh, I always do this, blah, 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 blah." So a lot of like harsh, critical kind of stuff going on the inside, self-recrimination, etc. And this used to be me big time. I didn't know there was any other way of going about it. I didn't know that there was anything I could do about it. I just had this harsh criticism in my head all the time. And a key skill that I learned, and let me say without exception, my clients have to learn if they're going to feel confident in their career, is the skill of respecting themselves, developing a way of working with themselves, of speaking to themselves and about themselves in a way which is respectful. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I just need to be kind to myself." And yes, if that works for you, great. But I find that kind of fluffy and a bit vague, and just another thing that people use to beat themselves with. So I like to think of it as being respectful. It's a minimum standard that we require in the workplace, right? Depending on your workplace, but you hope that a minimum standard is respect. You speak to people with respect, you speak about people with respect, that is conducting yourself in a professional way. And all I'm asking is that you also develop the skill of doing that for and about yourself. Speaking to and about yourself in a respectful way. And trust me, this is a skill that can be developed. I have been teaching the How to Quiet Your Inner Critic Masterclass for years. I love that class, and I love seeing the transformation that can happen when people stop beating themselves down and just being so harsh and so critical. So you know what it would be like for you at work if someone was just constantly criticizing you and being really harsh to you. Not good. It's not the kind of environment that you want to work in. And when we think about those foundational skills that I talked about, which will allow your career to grow up like a building or like a skyscraper, respect is just key. It's a cornerstone. So that is our first skill, and it is a skill that can be developed. So when you're speaking to yourself with respect, let's say, let's give an example from here. Let's say something goes wrong in my live stream. I don't immediately start criticizing myself and saying, "Oh, Anna, you're such an idiot. What did you even think you were doing? Why are you such a fool?" I would say, "Okay, well, you gave it a go. We could learn for next time." That's it. No harsh treatment, no harsh judgment, no recriminations. That is a key foundational skill that allows me to live my professional life in peace, and it will help you too. The second is to learn to trust yourself. And this comes up in a variety of formats. So you might be trusting your instinct. You might be trusting the expertise and the experience, the years of experience that you have. You might be trusting your opinion, even if somebody else doesn't agree. You might be trusting the thing that comes to your mind to say to somebody, like in a setting or in a meeting. You might be trusting that you're in your job for a good reason, that you're a good person for the job, right? People talk about imposter syndrome. It's not syndrome. It is somebody who hasn't developed the skill of trusting themselves at work. So when you haven't developed this skill of trusting yourself, excuse me, work, of course, is pretty difficult, and it's very difficult for you to feel confident. You might not feel confident in your ideas, in your opinion, in being able to challenge somebody or something. You may not feel confident accepting a new piece of work. You may not feel confident making a decision, right? That lack of trust comes out in so many different places. And again, if you can do your job, if you are a competent professional, you can learn to trust yourself. And when you do, you will be able to give an opinion without too much stress. You'll be able to rest knowing that you belong in your job and you're there for good reason, and um, you deserve it, right? So less imposter and more, no, I'm in my job and I deserve it. You will be able to challenge somebody, and when challenge comes back, you'll be able to maintain your position because you trust yourself and your expertise and your opinion. Now, that doesn't mean that you will never listen to other people or learn from other people. You will. But first off, you will experience trust rather than doubt. The third skill is around taking care of your emotions, and it is just vital because we have emotions at work. Some days you'll just sail through and everything feels fine, and that's great. But other days, emotions come up, whether that is um, fear or doubt or sadness or rage, right? All of these different emotions come up as part of your day, and they have an impact on your day. So let's say you're feeling a bit angsty or unsure. I have a day like that every single month. You might too. And you don't know how to deal with that. You'll just flip around from one thing to another, not being sure, not settling, pushing off the thing that you should be doing, not getting down to the thing that you should, not being sure about any of your interactions. Most people that I coach with are not necessarily yet even great at knowing what they are feeling or how they are feeling. They're so used to and so good at shoving it all down, pretending it's not there, and then being able to be analytical about it instead of feeling it, noticing it, looking after it, being able to work with it. And I used to be like that too. In professional settings, we're kind of like, right, we have a, how should I say, like a professional persona. And a lot of the time, it's kind of appropriate. We don't just react or respond to every emotion at work, right? We keep a professional persona. That's part of what creates an environment for us all to work in. But what I see many people doing is kind of um, forcing themselves to keep that professional environment even on the inside, so much so that they'll shove away and deny, push down emotions which just pop up again. I like to think of them as being like a beach ball. You know how if you're in a swimming pool and you push a beach ball underwater, it pops out again the minute that you're not looking. And if you can learn the skill of noticing and taking care of your emotions at the appropriate point, there will be less beach balls flying, and there will be more courage. Is that the right word? There will be more ability to not only roll with the day, but there will be more ability to spot an emotion that might completely derail your day. Spend 30 seconds using one of your tools, and then you're actually able to, it's gone, it's processed, and you can get on with the rest of your day. It's so important, but most of us miss it. So the fourth key skill is to be able to set realistic standards. And most of the people that I work with, for a lot of people whose confidence is lower than it could be or it should be, it's largely because their standards are just so high. They would identify probably with that label perfectionist, and their standards are so unrealistic that it would be very difficult to ever meet them. But they measure themselves by a completely unrealistic yardstick and then find themselves wanting. So, one of the key skills that you need to develop if you're going to have this strong foundation for your career and for your professional confidence is to be able to set realistic standards. And I'm not saying, and you might, if you've got a bit of black and white thinking on this, you might think it's either perfection or it's all the way over here at zero, and I won't try, I won't do anything, I'll just sit around and be lazy. Well, it's not my experience with most people. When you develop the skill of setting realistic standards, you're going to notice if you're being really actually super unfair in terms of what can be achieved in a given day, what you expect of yourself, for instance, when you're developing something or you're trying something new. Even like a simple example, like let's say you are, you newly have to report to a board, and it's the first time that you've done it. So you've done your board paper and you go along to the board, and you might have a totally unrealistic standard. You've never done it before, but yet you think that you should be flawless, perfect, every single thing, perfect, 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 articulate, perfect, 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 looking perfectly confident, everything perfect, answering all the questions, no problem, no sweat, no room for any kind of learning or it being your first time. Well, that's completely unrealistic, right? But when you haven't developed the skill of setting realistic standards, that's the standard you're going to set for yourself. And then you're going to scare yourself silly because you probably can't meet it. And so your professional confidence suffers. If you think about that being a foundational principle, right? Setting realistic standards like you would if you were a manager for somebody else, then if you don't have that, your career is going to wobble. And it brings us nicely onto the next skill, number 5, which is to be able to recover from mistakes and from failures and from setbacks. Now, people talk about resilience at work, and to me, this is really what we mean. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and stuff's always going to go wrong. No matter how much we try, and believe me, my clients try and have everything under control at all times. And even they will have a moment where something slips, something goes wrong. Maybe it was something unforeseen, or maybe it's just one of those things. Stuff happens, whether it's a failure, whether it's a mistake, whether it's a setback. That's life. And if you haven't developed the skill of recovery, when those moments hit, your confidence will be toppled. Because if your confidence is predicated on everything going right, like I can be confident if everything's perfect and I've got everything right and everyone thinks well of me all the time, that's fine until something goes wrong. But of course, something does go wrong, that is inevitable. And then what happens to your confidence? Well, it tanks. And you're like, I don't know what happened. Well, what happened was you had completely unrealistic standards because you hadn't learned number 4 skill, setting realistic standards. Something went wrong because it's always going to, and you didn't have the skill, number 5, developed of recovery when mistakes and failures and setbacks happen. Now, this has been hard won for me. This is a skill that I have really had to work on developing, and I'm still working on developing it. I am now, I would say, intermediate level, not mastery level. But you might be right back at beginner at the moment with this skill. And what that means is that you will also anticipate things that go wrong. You will be fearful of things going wrong, so you will put yourself under immense amount of pressure, and that will also make it more hard for you to feel confident at work because the pressure will be so high and the risk will feel so high and things will feel such high stakes if nothing can go wrong and everything has to go perfect because you know your confidence would be in the ditch if it didn't, because you haven't developed the skill, but you can develop the skill. I said it on a recent podcast. My coach has me working on the skill of having a 5-second funeral after something that hasn't worked or gone wrong. And I was thinking, 5 seconds, is she mad? Like in the past, it would have taken me 5 months. Then I got down to probably 5 weeks. Then maybe I got down to 5 days. I'm now down to kind of 5-ish minutes. 5 seconds? I don't know. Maybe I'll get there and then I'll be mastery level. But you have to have the skill of recovery, of resilience when things happen, because otherwise, when the inevitable happens, your confidence just ends up in the toilet. We're getting through them now. So this is number 6. And this is the skill of evaluating fairly. So let's say you are working for somebody and you hand them a piece of work. You want them to evaluate that fairly, i.e., you want them to look at what's good, what's worked, look at what might need fixing, and then be fair with you about that feedback. However, what often happens with the people that I'm working with is they do not evaluate themselves fairly at all. So they will look only at the negatives and they will kind of ignore the positives or the progress or the areas that are working. And in a given day, this might look like everything went right, one little thing went wrong, and that's what I'm focused on the way home. If you receive feedback on a piece of work, it might look like I received quite a lot of good feedback, but there was this bit of constructive feedback and it hit me so hard, I couldn't take it. It may be that your manager is evaluating you fairly, is evaluating the work you do fairly, but you're not. A tendency to really look at those negatives and kind of gloss over the positives, a tendency to be hyper focused on the stuff that went wrong or wasn't quite as good and kind of ignore the rest of it means that you are not evaluating fairly. And then you see a pretty skewed picture because you're so focused on the things that went wrong. Now, I think to a degree, this is a kind of human thing. But if you haven't developed the skill of evaluating yourself fairly, you won't be able to take feedback very well. And therefore, you probably won't be able to give it to other people very well either. You will find it harder to expose yourself to new things, to learn new things, because inevitably, when you're learning new things, when you're growing in an area, you're going to have to evaluate. There's going to be stuff which is wrong. There's going to be areas for growth and improvement. But if you can't and don't evaluate yourself fairly, if you don't have this skill, it's going to be so painful for you to do that evaluation that you're not going to want to do it. So this used to be me as well, actually, this one, where I would not want to hear negative feedback. I would really, really struggle with it. I found it very painful to hear because I was evaluating myself negatively inside my own head. So I was very sensitive to it. But you can develop this skill. And when you do, it allows you to take a piece of work and say, okay, well, that wasn't great. Oh, kind of error there, but that was good. Okay, I can work on this bit. I can improve it. It means you can take feedback and you can actually use it rather than it being, something to beat yourself over the head with and then have to ignore. So the seventh skill and the thing which is going to kind of underpin the others and really support you is to celebrate. And a lot of my clients, they're naturally a little bit resistant to this because when you're in a low confidence cycle, you don't really want to celebrate yourself or acknowledge yourself for the things that you've done or for the areas where you've developed or you've grown. You're kind of looking on the negative side. You're not really seeing the positive. And I'm not one of those people who says you should stand in the mirror and do affirmations about how great you are. If it works for you, then go for it. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the skill of noticing the things that you have done, noticing the effort that you have made, noticing the progress that you've made, and actually doing a bit of a celebration for yourself on that because it has not been easy, has it? There are days, I'm sure, there are moments, I'm sure, there are times where you've shown up and you would have wanted to do anything else, but you didn't. You stuck it out, you stuck at it. You got terrible feedback, but you got up there and did it again. And it deserves acknowledgement, it deserves celebrating. And so that is our final skill. And when you have developed these skills, here are 8, but you know what I mean. It creates a really strong and firm foundation for your career to grow and for your confidence to grow. And without it, your career can grow and will grow. And when there's a high wind or weather or some brick comes through your window, that structure is going to start to crumble and your confidence is going to start to crumble. So this is the work that I'm going to be doing with people. This is the work that I'm going to be teaching for the next however long. I don't know. I plan on years, maybe. I am going to be teaching it live this year, starting from April 20th, so 2026, inside the Confident at Work program. We're going to be taking each of these skills and we're going to be putting them throughout the year. This is a training program that's going to last an entire year. There's lots of space baked into it on purpose because we're just going to do one class on each of the skills. And I'm going to help you to find out where you are with the skill and really think about the things you need to do to develop it. And then I'm going to be there to help you develop it as you go out, as you try, as you fail, as you come back, to support you and help you to develop that skill. And across 12 months, a group of women together are going to develop those skills and watch your confidence grow. These are the underpinnings, the foundations that you need to put in place. And when you do, you can go from a low confidence cycle to a high confidence cycle, and you can remain there even when things get tough. If you have questions, email hello@yesyoucoaching.com, and I will see you in next week's live.